Thank you for joining us. It is just 9:13 a.m., the day beginning, but on a high, as of course Kenyans anticipate the State of the Nation address, the second by President William Ruto since he assumed office. And so far, we are just echoing that this particular sitting is a special sitting in the, of course, Parliament. It's a joint sitting by both the National Assembly and the Senate. He's expected to speak at 2:30 p.m. President William Ruto will give his address at 2:30 p.m. However, this address is delivered in accordance with the Constitution, that is with Article 132 of the Constitution, which provides for the President to address a special sitting of Parliament once every year and may address Parliament at any other time. All Kenyans are up and waiting, and of course we'll just get to see what he will say in that regard. I'm here with Javas Bigambo, who is a political analyst. He's also a lawyer, and we've been catching up on some of these things that the president has done. You have consistently said, let us look at the two sides of the coin, don't complain too much. I also appreciate that there are things that are working, but I do not know how many Kenyans share that sentiment with you. We'll check on the feedback shortly. Earlier on, we spoke about education. And truth is, this is not a favor to all Kenyans. And I like the way President William Ruto says every Kenyan needs to receive this, quality services throughout the country. Speaking about a man who came from Sugoi, they say a village man who rose the ranks, not from any dynasty, then there was an argument that when he took over power, he understood what the Wanjiku, the Atieno, the Mulamwa, or how do you call them, Wetangulas, understand. All right. Now, Kenyans have put us to task to ask, did this change with the broad-based government? Did this change with the political loyalties and friendships that come with politics? But essentially, let's get into education. You need education. Education got us both here. Every other child that's born after us, and the dream of many other presidents, is that they get not just education, but quality education. I want to play this bite by President William Ruto. That is in his first address to the nation, the first State of Nation address, rather, and then we can pick it up with Javas from there.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, our education system must develop a formidable reservoir of skill, talent, highly competitive and innovative human capital to support our vision of an economically transformed Kenya. Within weeks of taking office, I appointed the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform, led by Professor Raphael Munavu, my former teacher, who provided clarity on transition to the new competence-based curriculum and made further recommendations on necessary reforms in our education system from early childhood all the way to the tertiary levels. The Working Party concluded its work and submitted a report whose recommendations are already being implemented.
All right, let me just hear your remarks, Javas, because we want to also go to the streets. You know that there are two things that might be happening today. We'll come to that. What is your point, or what is your observation in the education sector?
You see, Anki, the fact that my father's firstborn son is sitting in this chair this morning
yes,
is a true demonstration that education and opportunity, once pursued with vigor, and when intellectual rigor is also pursued firmly, opportunity will always be available for everyone. Article 43 of the Constitution speaks to various social welfare components that are requisite and perfunctory for delivery by government to citizens. Education is one of them, the right to education. And the president speaks to the issue of the right to education. The right to education means, therefore, that the government must make available a conducive environment for education, the sustainability of education institutions, especially public ones, the issue of policy frameworks that make education smooth and seamless, the issue of instructors that enable the pedagogical advancement within our institutions, which means taking care of the welfare of teachers and lecturers,
right,
is something that's very important, or TVET instructors. All these things are very important. So education here has to be looked at from the basic levels to mid-level, to tertiary, and even higher education levels.
All right.
And all these components are very critical when you look at the whole framework of education. And so with the report of the President's Working Party on education, what we need to ask ourselves is, what is the status of implementation of the status report by the Munavu Working Party? Because the report was received by the President and now it's a question of implementation. What is the status of implementation? Are there any challenges or hiccups in that implementation? And when will be the full implementation done so that the entire education sector gets to pick or pluck the fruits of the President's Working Party report?
I want us to go into even deeper details after we just get a picture of what it looks like in the Nairobi CBD. And of course, we promise to go across the country, look at the mood, etc. this morning. It is chilly because I'm right here where Fred Kagonye is as well. Drizzling. I do not know how he's surviving there, but it's very good to see you, Fred, this morning. How are you? Is it what it is? Because there has been a concern, and of course on social media, that Kenyans might be coming out again with other concerns that might coincide with the State of the Nation address. Please let us know. Have they come out? How is the atmosphere? Good morning.
Good morning, Anki. I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. We are coming to you live from the intersection of Moi Avenue and Kenyatta Avenue. In front of us is Tomboya Street. And today, everything is running as it should be. There have been the call to protest on social media, which will be credited for the protests that we witnessed in the country in June and July, that are now dubbed the Gen Z demos or the anti-tax demos. Throughout this week, there have been calls for people to come out to protest against the President William Ruto-led administration. And today is a very important day because the President is supposed to give a State of the Nation address to both houses at Parliament buildings. And the reason as to why most people wanted to come out, or maybe why there have been calls for the people to come out and protest and express their displeasure with the Kenya Kwanza administration, is largely because of how bad the economy has been and the high taxes which Kenyans are saddled with. But today, as of now, the CBD is calm. We've not seen any protesters, but we've seen police officers who are patrolling the streets, maybe in anticipation that the protesters will come out in the numbers that we witnessed in June and July, to express and to their displeasure with the government, and also to exercise their constitutional right. As you can see, this is Moi Avenue. It's clear. Businesses are open. The matatus are going about their businesses, the taxis and boda riders. On the other end, it's still the same. So Nairobi is calm and nothing much is happening, Anki.
All right. Now, of course, we mostly, when we expecting this kind of happenings, especially the protests and what we have seen as coming out as people being rallied to come out in masses, we have often more than not seen security beefed up. How is it though when it comes to the security, the presence of police, also then, in as far as the president's address is concerned, what does it look like really? Because so far from what I'm seeing, it's less tense, and like you have said, it's quite calm. But any presence whatsoever of men in uniform at this point in time?
We can't really tell whether they are ununiformed police officers, but given the tactics that we saw that the police deployed during the anti-tax demos, is that we had so many ununiformed police officers conducting patrols and carrying out arrests actually. But today, the big numbers of Kenyans that are in the CBD will make it a bit harder to single out these officers, but some of the tactics that we saw was the use of Subaru vehicles. We've not spotted so many Subaru vehicles like we did during then. We've also not spotted Volkswagen Tiguans that are synonymous with the Directorate of Criminal Investigations officers who are credited for the arrest and to the abductions that we saw during the anti-tax demos. But we've seen police officers patrolling. As you can see behind me, there's a police lorry with some officers inside, and of course they are here to beef up security and to combat and try and dissuade any protesters who may choose to take to the streets. But the security outlook is that we've also spotted some different police vehicles in different areas. And maybe one might confuse that to be that they are securing the streets because the president is supposed to make an appearance in parliament where he'll address the nation. But clearly we can tell that they are here for the protesters, going by their attires and how well they are organized. And you can actually see that they have tear gas canisters for them, maybe that they plan to use on the protesters. So it remains to be seen whether the protesters will come out in the big numbers that we are used to, or even the small numbers, for us to really see whether the ununiformed police officers will come out and do what we are used to or what we saw during July and June protests.
Thank you very much, Fred Kagonye. At this point in time, indeed, I know that you're saying, but what you can see, we'll look at if there will be any progress, and I want to appreciate so much what you're doing this far. And of course, you, in good spirit this morning, Fred. Let's continue to be in touch. Now, let's come back in studio. Remember, we also have a team in Parliament at 2:30 p.m. when there's need to cross over live. We will as well, checking also the atmosphere in as far as this purported or, of course, tension, if not really to say tension, but that is on social media, calling people to come out on the streets. Let's get into it. Matters education, and Jarvis Bigambo had cut you short earlier on to just bring that picture to us, but so far Nairobi is calm. You were saying that it's very, very important that the government understands its mandate in as far as education is concerned, but we have also seen challenges. In fact, this year, with the first years, even as we're speaking, we have had the lecturers come out and called out the government on quite a number of issues just the other day, just last week. So where does this then leave President William Ruto, and what do you expect in the future? All right, because like you said, very new projects all at once, very many challenges as well, which might put him in not a very good political light.
Well, I think when it comes to the issues of government appreciating matters governance, when the president first took office and then appointed a presidential working party on education, I think it was an early effort to demonstrate clarity and appreciation of the state of the education sector, and why, trying to look to diagnose and come up with a policy prognosis whose implementation would lead to the healing of the sector. And even today, the president, I do anticipate highly that he will make a diagnostic approach in his remarks and give an effective prognosis of policy positions, not in capsule form, but comprehensive form, such that various sectors get to be healed. When you look at the education sector, at the primary level, we have got the CBC, a new education curriculum model. And we know that it is a model that commenced during the sunset years of former President Uhuru Kenyatta. And it is not a Uhuru Kenyatta project or curriculum. It is a government curriculum. And that is why it is the duty of governments to continue, because governments exist in perpetuity. It's only administrations that change. To continue, but also ameliorate programs that seem to be ailing or having some challenges.
All right.
And so with the respect to matters CBC, right now, there are still some minimal concerns.
Minimal concerns.
I can say that concerns under CBC were very grave initially when the program first started. The concerns are still there. What I think we need to do is to find a way of dissecting every sector, for example, education in this case, and CBC in particular, and continue bringing various stakeholders together for purposes of reflection and implementation. Because it is not just a matter of government implementing projects. The collective sense of governance demands that stakeholders and all players, for that matter, should always come together So consciously, the government should always ensure that it creates opportunity and platforms.
What about the finances? Because I'm looking forward to you coming to the finances right after President William Ruto took over power, which of course you're saying is not really a matter of a particular administration. Some of these things have been historical, but you saw matters that happened with CDF at some point. Of course, the floods came right in, but there was the CDF issue. Talking about we have this vast amount of money. The recipients of the money saying the Treasury hasn't actually released this money, or it hasn't reached us for that matter. At what point, Wakili, will you speak on the finances?
Finances remain a very important issue, whether at individual level, family level, institutional level, and even at government level. And they'll remain a going concern. I think on matters of finance and even how they are disbursed, whether to county governments, whether to, through the social welfare program for the senior citizens, and even to, the capitation to institutions, it is something that remains very critical. Manifestly, we have seen that there are some challenges and delayed disbursements, for instance.
Right.
And some of them have been attributed to the issues to do with revenue collection. I've just seen, for example, in the dailies here a report that Kenya Revenue Authority has not hit its revenue targets. Even for the month and for the period. And you know that government does not have its own money. Government has public money, which it collects through all these revenues, call them taxes, etc. And when all these taxes are collected, there are priority services, of course, essentially that have got to be put first on the list. The service sector, for example, when it comes to matters military, security, education. All these are priority issues for government service delivery, including the health sector, so that a nation does not grind to a halt when some of these essential services are not financed. The other thing is that we need, I think, to come up, and we as Kenyans, as ordinary Kenyans, come up with frameworks that are real and true on matters of accountability and transparency in management of public funds. We need to ask ourselves, how are public institutions managing all funds that are channeled to them? Whether it's a public university, whether it's a public high school or primary school, whether it is a state corporation. I think, Anki, one of the major challenges we are having is the issue of being imprudent and being unaccountable when it comes to the public shilling. Because at times people get into wastage or pilferage or the hemorrhaging of the public shilling because they think that public money is not money that should actually be checked with a spotlight. Public money is actually our money, and we must be continuously concerned about the expenditure at institutional level.
Now, even as we speak on this, this particular, address, and this is even written, in the Parliament website, the President will have to speak to measures he has taken, his administration, and now we talk about him, to actually achieve national security. National security. And even as you look at our front page, and I think you have the standard there, our abductions, all right, I'm going to say our, because it is, at some point you have to own it. But who will take that ownership? Who will be responsible for them? You saw what happened. Kenyans came out. Some even told their stories. Some, until today, are still not found. All right? And now you're seeing new abductions, that theater, they call that, for foreigners. Kizza Besige's story is making headlines. He was here in the country for the Martha Karura's book launch, went to see a friend, and pretty much it continues on and on. Perhaps your word on this, because it's in fact, it's very clear that national security is something the President will not avoid.
Anki,
at this point.
You ask very fundamental questions. Questions that stick out like thorns on a rose. Look, when the President delivers his State of the Nation address today, there are two imperatives that are in the Constitution that he must speak to.
Yes.
One, that are domestic with respect to values of good governance and their implementation. Two, the country's obligation to international law, which speaks to foreign policy issues and the Kizza Besigye issue, related kind of issues. Earlier, I had mentioned that I do anticipate that the president will be quite convivial, quite easy, a fireside chat kind of approach in his remarks today. I do anticipate that he will be commiserative with the families, especially the mothers and wives of Kenyans who lost their loved ones, whether through protests, the anguish and anxiety and the pain of those who are still reeling from the consequences of some of their relatives having disappeared or allegedly abducted. The president has to speak to the issue of national security. Article 238 of the Constitution provides for the framework of national security. And remember that the president chairs the National Security Council.
Right.
So the president cannot avoid the issue of national security. I ask myself, as any other Kenyan would, what do Kenyans want?
Right.
Kenyans want assured security. Kenyans want money in the pocket. Kenyans want more than 3 square meals a day. They want meals, they want all the squares. The other thing is that Kenyans want to make sure that there is a dependable education system and that agribusiness works for entrepreneurs and farmers alike, and that senior citizens have got a place in the shed of national providence. So these are the issues that the president needs to speak to. Now, on the issue of national security, we have got obligations.
Right.
When it comes to foreign policy imperatives, Kenya as a country relates with our neighborly or neighborhood countries through citizens and with citizens, and then through governments, and that's why we have got diplomatic relations and engagements. Governments relate at a higher level through diplomatic engagements.
Right.
And that's why our diplomatic missions are even in Uganda, for example, for that matter. Also security concerns. And those, for example, institutions like Interpol exist to work with other governments to ensure that globally there is the policing aspect for purposes of global and international security. The issue of Kizza Besigye is an issue that I am aware that the Principal Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Sing'oei, spoke to yesterday. He addressed himself and applied his mind to some of the issues surrounding the matter. There were questions around the Turkish foreigners that were taken back to their country by way of, if you like, deportation. And it was, I understand from the statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs through Dr. Sing'oei that it was a state request to the sister state that Kenya is. There are critical components of international relations. Well, persons have raised even questions about the non-refoulement doctrine and Kenya's adherence to it. I think with time, because it is, there's the government spokesman who ably should be speaking to the government position on very many issues. But I would want to say that the issue, for example, of the tax, the issue of Besigye, has got, yes, the international relations component between Kenya's sister state that Uganda is. There is the security component, that how was he helped out of the country and found himself in the arms of the security organs in his own motherland. There is also the concern of our immigration ecosystem, that if he found himself in Kenya legally through our port of entry that the airport is, then the issue around his being helped out of the country through mysterious ways is an issue that I think then various organs of government can ably speak to. And I've seen that Dr. Sing'oei has applied his mind and addressed himself to those issues.
And also then, in that same regard, because the question is, am I safe in my own country? I mean, this is where you call home. You have to be safe right from in your house, at your doorstep, in the market. That is safety. Not safe at one point and not safe in the other. It should be a conducive and safe environment for every Kenyan, just by the right of being a Kenyan first. The president has been very firm, because before we get even into matters corruption, because we saw quite a number of things, including Gen Z protests based on opulence, etc. Extrajudicial, all right, forces of killings. You've had people talk about Subarus or such stuff. Presently, we had the Yala case, and remember then how President William Ruto was very firm on that matter. And you remember the former deputy president as well echoing and saying, we made a promise to these people. There are certain things that seem to be making their way back here ought not to have happened under this administration. Is it a big challenge for Ruto today?
Well, I think as a matter of fact, just as J.J. Rousseau once quipped, one of the political philosophers of yore, that man is born free, but everywhere they live in chains.
All right.
People live in chains of fear, chains of anxiety, chains of autocratic regimes as it is in other parts of the world. But on matters of security that everybody yearns for, everybody desires, and everybody has got a right to, the principle of and the doctrine of the social contract in governance entails that when a government takes over the reins of power, the citizen cedes some of their rights and power to the government as a quid pro quo through those votes, and that, hence the social contract, so that government therefore can take care of some responsibilities as its mandate. One of those critical responsibilities that government takes over through social contract, one is security of the person through national security measures. Second is the issue of social security services and development, including infrastructure development.
Yes.
Those are some of the critical components within a social contract.
Right.
Anki, let me tell you that any single day, every single Kenyan deserves the best security and assurance from the government. And that's why I told you a little earlier that one of the things that Kenyans want and deserve is assured security. It is the mandate of government, and that's why we have got even the Ministry of Interior and National Coordination that is in charge of matters to do with national security internally for the citizen.
Which is yet to have a CS?
Well, it has a CS, but not substantive.
Okay.
Because we have got an acting Cabinet Secretary for Interior.
Acting.
Who is Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, by way of the Gazette notice that I saw with my own eyes.
Yes. But we've been talking about who is going to take over officially from the now Deputy President.
It remains the President's prerogative to determine who is it that best suits that mandate, because part of the functions of the President is to appoint Cabinet Secretaries.
Indeed.
And we want to pleasantly imagine that in the not too distant future, or in a period so foreseeable, the President will exercise his prerogative to nominate a person for that office, and then have that person vetted by Parliament or National Assembly for that matter before formal appointment, because that is part of the joint appointment powers that the Parliament has.
Let me grab this copy, if I may, and I want to look at Start Your Home Ownership Journey Today. We have 7 pages today on the status of government's affordable housing program implementation and launch of house sales in 21 projects across the country. When the housing levy conversation began, in fact, some would correct me and say, do not call it levy, call it a hashtag. All right. Looking at this, and I just want to, because we're looking at progress, this is why the President is coming before us. Even as I get to that page, I want to, pick your wisdom on the housing levy. It is true we did decent houses, but you've also had what Kenyans said at the onset, and like you said, it has nothing to do with a particular president or administration. These are, projects that have been running in different administrations, but it is government projects. As we look at what has actually been put here as ready for allocation, someone will ask me, what do you mean ready for allocation? But I'm seeing a number of houses here in Molo, in Bahati Nakuru, in Kapsuswa, I'm seeing in Milimani, Lurambi, in Kakamega, Nanyuki, Laikipia. All this, Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, Wakili, have put on the Gazette as affordable housing units that are ready for allocation. Is it a win for Ruto?
I've seen you've mentioned even Lurambe, I think, where your grandmother comes from. But I think from what has been contained in the dailies today, I think from page 27, about the affordable housing project as a government initiative and whose successes is being portrayed here, it's a demonstration that the housing project initially, of course, remember, as primarily commenced by former President Uhuru Kenyatta, housing project and various projects that have begun under the reign of President William Ruto. It's a demonstration that When policies are fast-tracked, those policies through implementation, they get to work and people get to see them. Now,
people get to see them.
They have indicated in these dailies, as we've seen, that these houses are ready for allocation. And I think it may be a demonstration that these houses, therefore, in those particular counties, as distributed, that therefore persons, and remember in the matter of ownership of these houses, one needs to register in particular areas for purposes of allocation, because you cannot be a domicile in Kasipul Kabondo and then you want to get a house in North Hor. So I think the issue of registration therefore is imperative, so that there is the aspect of consideration. Remember that there are places with 300 houses, there are places with 1,500 units, other places with 2,600 units, etc.
Even 975 units, 4,054 units. I'm looking at Kibera, if you like, 4,000. And we're seeing the current project statuses for some of these. You just grab a copy of the Standard to see what we're seeing here. That is the Bold newspaper on page, it's a whole, 7 pages. Just buy a copy of the Standard. Allow me to, of course, bring that calling to you again to follow with us this. And of course, Wakili, as I'm looking at this, there are some of the projects that could look quite interesting in as far as the current project status is concerned. I'm looking at this Bondeni in Nakuru. And if you're watching us from Nakuru, really, allow me to also invite them to take an actual picture with your phone, all right? And send it to our WhatsApp number and our free toll number as well for SMSs. And let us know if it is true that this is the status of this housing project in Nakuru. I'm looking at Bondeni, where the number of units is 605. The units available is 121. And really, this looks to me pretty much as almost completed, Wakili. I don't know what you see, and if you can speak to this, that President William Ruto, because it's not just going to be speaking about promises, because Kenyans have named him, and I quote unquote, the promising president.
Well, Kenyans have labeled President William Ruto as the promising president.
Yes.
But he needs now to come out today through his State of the Nation address as a real prophet, just as it was with biblical Elijah. That when he prophesied, when he spoke to, when he promised, that actually he's living to the promises that he made. The successful completion of the housing projects, for example, or the successful completion of the CAIPs, the County Aggregated Industrial Project, parks, will be, in fact, a signature statement beyond legacy issues for President William Ruto. And I think this coming at a very important time, a historic day when the president is speaking to the nation and the world, that these houses are ready for allocation. It would be very important for Kenyans then to appreciate that whatever the president promised, he seems and he is actually living through them and implementing. And that's why I like what you've said, that Kenyans, wherever they are, to go to some of these sites and send. The issue is, actually, Kenyans want to see results from the president's policies. That every policy pronouncement he's made, people want to see corresponding results to those particular policies. And that's why I think, beyond the issue of the successful completion for these projects by way of the allocation that I'm seeing, the president's remarks today should speak to the frankness of policies that already are being implemented and Kenyans are actually reaping fruits or just about to reap the fruits.
All right, what I have to keep echoing is that we're looking at your feedback to see how many people either disagree or agree with the sentiments in studio, but it's also important to see what is happening on the ground in a Semaji. All right. So let's cross over. Daniel Kariuki is, of course, at the Parliament. It's very good to see you, Daniel. The weather, some would say, weathering. How is the state right now? Just let us know the updates of the atmosphere and the movement around the Parliament buildings. Daniel.
A very good morning to you. Anki Dor is back in studio, and as you have said it, I'm here at the Parliament buildings where the State of the Nation address by President William Ruto is going to be taking place as from 2:30 p.m. today. But as we speak right now, nothing much is actually happening here. It's just some preparation here and there from the parliament, the presence of parliament, we can see different preparations on different areas that the president is going to be visiting, including after the briefing, or rather after the State of the Nation, where they are going to be having time with the members of parliament as well as the speakers of the two houses. That's the Speaker Moses Wetangula of the National Assembly, as well as the Senate Speaker Amason Kingi. Definitely, right now this morning also we can see security being beefed up from all areas here at the parliament buildings. And if the camera person can just show you exactly what is happening here, the area is cordoned off by security officers, and some few minutes ago here I saw the regional commander Bungei here going around to see how the situation is, and vehicles are not being allowed to use this road here at the parliament. And again, this is the road that the presidential entourage is going to be using to access parliament. And also right now, some few minutes ago, we saw the military doing some preparations on how they are going to be doing the guard of honor that is going to, or how they are going to mount the guard of honor later on, where the president is going to have that guard of honor in matters to do with the day's exercises, or rather the day's events. You remember, before he goes into parliament, President William Ruto will have a guard of honor and then go to the speaker's office, sign a visitor's book before he makes his way into the chambers, where he's going to be invited by one of the speakers. That's the Speaker of the Senate, or rather, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula. And of course, keen interest on the speech by President William Ruto on matters that he's going to be addressing today. Remember, this is the second State of the Nation by President William Ruto, but the third address in Parliament, the first one being the official opening of the 13th Parliament, where he addressed the adjoint sitting, and the State of the Nation address last year. And today, now, he's going to be having the third address in Parliament, but it is the second State of the Nation, where he's going to be addressing what the government has done over the time. Of course, we'll be talking about matters that have been of concern to Kenyans, and also matters that have raised issues we have seen actually before the Catholic bishops raise issues concerning the governance of the country, and these are some of the issues that they are going to be telling us about. Including matters to do with health, education, matters to do with the security of the country, matters to do with the development, matters to do with even how he has managed to govern this country. And definitely it is coming at a time also that this year we have seen a lot that has happened, including the dissolution, or rather the cabinet dissolution. And of course he will he will talk about that because of having a new cabinet that is in a broad-based government, and that is one of the issues definitely we anticipate that President William Ruto is going to be addressing. Also, it is coming at the backdrop of the impeachment of his deputy, Rigathi Gachagua, who is now former deputy president, and subsequently the swearing in of Kithure Kindiki as the new deputy president and as the third deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. And definitely we are going to be listening to that. I remember when the swearing in ceremony of Professor Kithure Kindiki, the president talked about the parliament being showing the constitution being upheld in some of these issues. So definitely, as he will be addressing parliament, it is something that we are going to be looking forward to the president addressing it. And Ankidori, is just that is happening, nothing much. As I have told you right now, it's a bit morning, and definitely we are going to be keen to see what will be happening later on, of course, as the preparation on this State of the Nation continues here at the Parliament buildings, and we'll keep the viewer updated. But for now, it's just security and preparations in various areas across the Parliament, the precincts of Parliament. For now, I want to hand it back to you, Anki Doris, and assure you that security is indeed beefed up here at the Parliament buildings.